Okay, chapter Math 161, chapter 1.3, quadratic equations. Okay, the quadratic equations. Okay, what are the quadratic equations? Okay, it contains equal sign anyway because it's an equation, and the degree of a variable x is 2. So this is a second degree equation. So always check whether the highest degree, the power exponent is 2, then this is quadratic equation. So it looks like this. When you put all the terms, the x squared term, x term, and constant term to the left, then the other side will be always 0. So we can have quadratic equation in this standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And of course, the coefficient, the leading coefficient a should not be equal to 0, because if a equals 0, then the ax squared will be 0. Then this is no longer a quadratic equation. So make sure x squared, the coefficient of x squared term is not 0. And of course, a, b, c, the coefficients a, b, c they are real numbers. So okay, we need another definition of product, zero product principle, zero product rule. That means you have a product, let's say a times b. And if the product is equal to 0, then in order for this product to be 0, either a or b, either the factor a or b needs to be 0, right? Because something like this, because if 3 times 0 is 0, right? 0. Or 0 times 3 is also 0. So if any factor is 0, then the product is 0. So don't forget this. So we're going to use this information to solve quadratic equation. So let's say we want to solve this equation. This is a quadratic equation. So in order to find the values of x that makes the equation 0, we will factor this trinomial, the left-hand side. So we're going to make it something like this. We're going to make it as x times b equals 0. Then either the factor a has to be 0 or the factor b has to be 0, right? So let's factor this trinomial. And I wonder, you already know how to factor the trinomial, right? Okay, here's a method of factoring a trinomial. Okay, make sure the x squared term comes first, and then x term next, and constant term. Then we can find a pair of products of the first term. So x squared is always x times x, and 15, this is negative 15. And negative 15 is 3 times, there are many combination of pairs of product, pairs of products. So 15 can be either 1 times 15, or 15 times 1, or 3 times 5, and 5 times 3, like this. So these are pairs of products, the factors that makes negative 15. So negative can be either this side or this side, even this side or this side, right? So let's try one of these factors, one of these pairs. So let's make it 3 times 5. 3 times 5 is 15, and we need negative 15. So let's put negative on 3. Okay, and then cross multiply. Cross multiply, then this is negative 3x. Cross this multiply, then this is 5x. Next step is add these two results. Then it is 2x. Okay, finally, compare this result. The sum of these two cross products is equal to the term in the middle. Then we found the two pairs. We found the binomial factors. So this is equal to, can you see here? The first line and the second line. These two binomials are the factors. So we can write it as x minus 3 times x plus 5. Okay, so this is the factor. These are two binomial factors. So this equation can be written as x minus 3 plus times x plus 5 equals 0. So using the zero product principle, we can set this factor equal to 0 or this factor equal to 0. So if you set x minus 3 equal to 0, or we can set the second factor, binomial factor is equal to 0. Then from this, plus 3 each side, so x equals 3, or from this one, minus 5 each side, so x is negative 5. So we found two solutions, 3 and negative 5. Okay, so, factoring trinomial, there are different ways. So we will use this method. I will keep explaining this one as we solve quadratic equations. Okay, so another equation. Let's solve 2x squared minus 5x equals 12. All right, so we will put all terms to the left. So right side of the equation will be 0. It will be, so rewrite the equations. So move 12 to the left, so minus 12 equals 0. The next, we're gonna do a factoring, right? So the first term is 2x squared. So this is a product of x times 2x. And negative 12, there are many different pairs of factors to make a negative 12. So why don't we try something like 4 times 3? Maybe 4 times 3 equals 12. The negative sign should go, one of these two. So maybe we can put on 4. All right, and then next step is cross multiply. Okay, cross multiply. Then this will be negative 8x. Cross multiply. Then this will be 3x. The next step is make a sum of these two results, which is negative 5x. And this result is same as the second term, this guy, right? Negative 5x. So we found the match. So this trinomial becomes the product of the first line and the expression in the second line. So if we rewrite it, it looks like this. X minus 4 times 2x plus 3 equals 0. So using the same information, we will set each factor equal to 0 so that we can find the value of x. So the first binomial, set the first binomial is equal to 0, or we can set the second binomial is equal to 0 to find x. Then move negative 4 to the right, then x equals 4, or in this case, move 3 to the right and negative 3, and then divide each side by 2, so negative 3 over 2. So these are the solutions of this trinomial, this equation. Can you see how we factor this one, trinomial? Good. Anyway, let's keep trying. Okay, here's an equation, x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 0. Okay, let's try. Okay, let's factor this trinomial. So the first term is always x times x. And 16 can be 2 times 8 or 4 times 4. So in this case, let's try 4 times 4. And the result is positive, but the sum should be negative, right? So why don't we put both negative? Still, negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. So cross multiply, then this will be negative 4x. This cross multiplication is negative 4x. And then sum of these two results will be negative 8x. And this result is same as the term in the middle. So this trinomial can be written as x minus 4 times x minus 4 equals 0. So setting each factor equal to 0, x minus 4 is equal to 0, right? Or x minus 4 is equal to 0. These two binomials are same, right? So we have one solution. So 4 is the solution, right? 4 is the solution. So we call this a double solution. One solution, but actually there are two of them. So two solutions are the same solution, right? So x equals 4 is the solution of this equation. Here is a very important and very useful formula. Okay, let's say one side is squared. It is a square root procedure. So one is something squared is equal to a number. Then we can find x. So we can remove the power 2. Then we have only the base left on the left-hand side of the equation. So x is equal to plus or minus. So take the plus or minus square root on the right-hand side. Okay, very important and very useful. All right, very important and very useful. So what if we have something like this? Okay, x squared is equal to, let's say, 3. Then what is x? Then take plus or minus square root on the right-hand side. So this is the solution. So there are two solutions. One is positive and the other one is negative solution. Okay, what if we have something like this? X minus 1 squared is equal to 3. Then, okay, once we remove this power 2, then what we have is only the base on the left-hand side. Then the right-hand side becomes plus or minus square root of 3. Then move minus 1 to the other side, then 1 plus or minus square root of 3. So this means there are two solutions. One is x equals 1 plus square root of 3, or x equals 1 minus square root of 3. Okay, how about what if the x squared? What if x squared is negative number, like a negative 3? Then still the same thing. What we do is remove the power 2, then put plus or minus on square root on the right hand side. And since the square root is negative, the result is an imaginary number, right? Complex number. Then the result will be square root of plus or minus square root of 3i. Do you remember? Square root of negative 1 can be written as the imaginary unit I, right? So whenever the square root contains negative sign, then put the negative sign away and it becomes I. Okay, I. All right, then let's try examples related to this square roots. Okay, solve 3x squared plus 12 equals 0. This equation, so okay, we have an x squared term. So why don't we leave the x squared term and then move 12 to the right, so negative 12. So in order to use this square root property, we can divide each side by 3. So that x squared is equal to negative 4. All right, then next step is what? Remove the square. So x equals, the right side becomes plus or minus square root of negative 4. Then x equals plus or minus, this is equal to square root of 4i, right? 4i. Then square root of 4 is equal to what? That is 2, right? 2. So 2i. So the solution is a complex number because there is imaginary unit I, complex number. So the answer, there are two answers. One is positive 2i, the other one is negative 2i. Okay, let's try another example. X plus 1 squared is equal to 48. All right, the left-hand side is already squared. So remove the square. So we have x plus 1, only the base left on the left-hand side. And the right side becomes plus or minus square root of 48. Then x plus 1 equals plus or minus, what is square root of 48? Is it, okay, let's change it. Whenever we have a square root, we will make 48 as a product of squares. So let's divide 48 all the way down until we have squares. So 2 times 24 is 48, and 24 is 2 times 12. 12 is 2 times 6. 6 is 2 times 3, right? So this one, 2 times 2. So this is 2 squared and another 2 squared. So we can write it as 2 squared times 2 squared times 3. So that x plus 1 equals, now this 2 and 2 goes out, so it will be 2 times 2 is 4, square root of 3. And then finally, move plus 1 to the right, so negative 1 plus 1 minus 4 square root of 3. So there are two solutions. One is negative 1 plus 4 square root of 3, and the other one is negative 1 minus 4 square root of 3. Can you see how we simplify this? So whenever you have a squared, then remove the square, the power 2, then put plus or minus square root on the right hand side. Okay, next method is completing the square method. This is also a very useful method. Okay, let's say there is a quadratic expression like x squared plus 6x. Okay, so we have two terms. One is x squared and the other one is x term. Then we can add some number. We can add a number so that this will be a perfect square. Perfect square means something squared. X plus something squared. All right, so in order to make the third number, okay, this one is always comes like this. The coefficient of x. Okay, the coefficient of x term is 6. So always divide the coefficient of x by 2 and then square it. Then if we simplify the base, then it will be 3, right? So 3 squared should go over here. All right, so this is the 3 squared. Then this one comes, then this one will be x plus 3 squared. Can you see how it works? So x squared plus 6x will have another constant. We'll have a constant so that this trinomial become a perfect square. And the perfect square is x plus 3. In this case, this x and the base, this 3 will be the binomial, the base, and then squared. Can you see how it works? So let's try this example. Okay, solve x squared equals 2x plus 6 by completing the square method. All right. So why don't we move all the terms to the left? No, we need only x squared and x term. So move this 2x to the left. They give us space here, then equals 6. So we're going to add a number to the left side of the equation so that we're going to add the same number to the right side of the equation. So what goes to this number? So the coefficient of x is negative 2, right? So divide negative 2 by 2 squared, which is negative 1 squared will be added to the left side of the equation. So this will be negative 1 squared. So once we added this to the left, we also need to add the same number to the right. Okay, make sense? So this is an equation. So since this is an equation, if we add a number to the left side of the equation, then also you have to add the same number to the right side of the equation. Then this trinomial becomes a perfect square. So that is x minus 1 squared. And then 6 plus 1, right? So x minus 1 squared is equal to 7. Now we can remove the power 2. Then we have x minus 1 on the left side of the equation. Then the right side becomes plus or minus square root of 7. Then move minus 1 to the right. So plus 1 each side. Then 1 plus or minus square root of 7. So the solutions are 1 plus square root of 7. And the other one is 1 minus square root of 7. Okay, this is method 161 college algebra, and all these things are already covered in the previous math, but I will try to explain in detail as possible. Okay, Okay, let's try our next example. Okay, for this example, okay, what we need is x squared and x term on one side. So why don't we move -1 to the right? So we can write it 2x squared plus 8x and give a space over here because we're going to add a number and the -1 goes to the right. Actually, not yet because can move it to the right. Now, in order to make to complete the square using the completing square, okay, we don't need these two. So always the x squared, the leading coefficient, the coefficient of x squared term must be 1. So we're going to divide each side by 2. Okay, divide each side by 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide the left hand side by 2 and the right hand side by 2. Okay, divided by 2. So it will be x squared plus 4x equals 1/2. All right. Okay, then next step, we need to add a constant to the left and the right side of the equation. So what goes there? Okay, half the coefficient. Okay, let me change the color. Half the coefficient, so 4/2 and square it. So that is 2 squared. So this one goes over here and over there. So 2 squared goes here, 2 squared goes here. All right, then the left-hand side becomes perfect square, x plus 2 squared equals 1/2 plus 4. Let's simplify the right-hand side. This is 1/2 plus 8/2. So x plus 2 squared equals 9/2. All right, next, remove the power to the exponent, then the base equals plus or minus square root of 9/2. Then -2 each side, then x equals -2 plus or minus square root of 9/2. Now let's simplify the radical. So this is equal to x equals -2 plus or minus. Okay, you can separate the numerator is square root of 9 over the denominator is square root of 2. Then x equals -2 plus or minus 3 over square root of 2. Okay, one more. When you simplify a fraction, the denominator cannot have a square root. So what we do is rationalize the denominator. So you can multiply the both sides of both numerator and denominator by square root of 2. In this case, multiply both numerator and the denominator by square root of 2. Then this is equal to -2 plus or minus 3 square root of 2 over multiply square root of 2 twice. That equals 2, right? So that's the answer. Or you can combine together. Then it looks like -4/2, right? You make a like denominators. Then this one is -4 plus or minus 3 square root of 2/2. So the answer, you can write the answer like this, or you can write the answer like this. Doesn't matter. This is just a simplifying the different method of writing the solutions. So either this one or this one is okay. So when we solve quadratic equation by completing square methods, make sure x squared, the coefficient of x squared is equal to 1. So since this is 2, what do we do? Divide the equation by 2 so that the coefficient of x squared will be 1. And then the constant, to make a trinomial to be a perfect square, make sure the constant is the square of have the coefficient of x. Okay, really important. Okay, next method is using quadratic formula. Okay, quadratic formula is from the quadratic equation, we can find the solution using the formula. So look at this. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. This is the quadratic equation. Then there are coefficients a, b, and c. So using this a, b, c, we can find the solution directly. So this is the formula. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. This is the solution. What you have to do is just plug in the values of a, b, and c into this formula. Then how do you memorize? Do you have to memorize this formula? Oh yes, it is better because sometimes this is very useful. So you don't have to use if you already we already explained the method of completing the square method and the factoring, right? And this is the third method that you can try. So how do you memorize this formula? Well, okay, let me make a story. I made a story to memorize this one. Okay, here's a square root, right? Square root. So if there is a 4, then if you have, we can rewrite this 4 as 2 times 2, right? So if 2 has a power 2, then this power can remove the radical symbol, right? So the answer will be 2, right? So what if we have something like this, 3 squared? Then this square can break this exponent, this radical symbol, so that the result will be 3. So this 3 can get out from here, right? So let's assume that this is a prison. The square root is a prison, right? Then we can find the solution like this. Okay, there's a bad boy, so negative b. Negative b means bad boy, right? Bad boy. So the bad boy is in a prison. He's in a prison, so once he tries to escape from the prison, he may succeed or fail, right? Succeed or fail. So plus or minus, succeed or fail when he tries to escape from the prison. All right, then in order to escape, to break the wall, the boy needs power 2, right? He needs power 2 so that you can break it. So once he gained the power 2, then it's time to go straight, right? Go straight. Go for action. It's time for action. For action, AC. For action, for AC. So that he can escape. Once he escaped from the prison, okay, then he can write a letter to all his inmates. 2A. Okay, I just made a little story. So bad boy. There's a bad boy. May succeed or fail when he tries to escape from the prison. Then he needs power, the boy needs power too. Then it's time to go for action. Then what? Write a letter to all his inmates. Okay, just a little story. So using this quadratic formula, let's solve this equation. So in order to solve this equation by using the quadratic formula, move all 3 terms to the left. So x squared minus 3x minus 5 equals 0. So in this case, the coefficient of x squared is 1, so a equals 1, b equals negative 3, and c equals negative 5, right? Then write the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So from this, let's replace all these a, b, c with their values. So b is negative 3. So negative times negative 3 plus or minus square root of b squared. So negative 3 parentheses, put parentheses, squared minus 4 times a is 1, b 4ac, c equals negative 5 over 2a, 2 times 1. So from this, we can find x. Okay, so this is 3 plus or minus square root of, okay, let's simplify this. That is, okay, the inside of this square root symbol is 9 plus 20, right? That is 29. So that is square root of 29 over 2. So is that the answer? Yes. So there are two solutions. One is x plus square root of 29 over 2, and the other one is minus. So 3 minus square root of 29 over 2. Okay, let's try this example. Okay, here is the coefficient of x squared is 4. So a equals 4, b equals negative 4, and then c equals 3. So write the formula, quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So x equals, now substitute all these variables. So negative b is negative 4 plus or minus square root of b squared negative 4 squared minus 4ac over 2a. So x equals 4 plus or minus square root of, okay, this one is 4 times 4 is 16, and minus 16 times 3, 48. So that is equal to negative 32, right? So this is negative 32, and negative, since the square root inside the square root is negative, this is a complex number, right? 8. So negative 32. So negative 32 is a product of 2 times 16, and 16 is 4 times 4, right? So x equals 4 plus or minus 4 square root of 2 negative 2, right? And then negative can be imaginary unit, so negative 1 becomes I, right? I over 8. So from here, x equals, you can separate the numerator, so x over 8, sorry, 4, that is 4, right? 4. So that is 4 over 8. Plus or minus 4 square root of 2 over 8 I. So finally, x equals 1 over 2 plus or minus square root of 2 over 2. Simplify I. Okay, so the solution is, solutions are complex numbers. 1/2 plus square root of 2 over 2i, and the other one is minus 1/2 minus square root of 2 over 2i. Okay, next definition is really important, because when we have a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, then the solution, the type of the solution can be determined by the radicand inside the square root symbol. So b squared minus 4ac. So from this one, b squared minus 4ac, we can find the type of the solutions. So we call this discriminant. So the discriminant is the expression of the radicand, which is the expression inside the square root symbol, b squared minus 4ac. Okay, just like this. If the b squared minus 4ac is positive, greater than 0 is positive, something like this, square root of 2. 2 is positive, right? Then, the quadratic formula gives us, something like some number plus or minus square root of, some number like this. So since this number is positive, there are two solutions: positive square root of something, and then negative square root of positive number, right? Positive something, square root of something. So there are two solutions, and those solutions are square root, right? Square root is a real number. Do you remember real numbers? Rational numbers. So here is the real numbers, and real numbers composed of rational, and irrational, right? Irrational. And irrational numbers are the ones that never terminate and never repeat. So square root, pi, or e, like this. And the rational numbers are, it may can be written as a fraction, right? Fraction. So anyway, if we have a square root of a positive number, then this is irrational number, so it's a real number, right? Real number. So there are two distinct real numbers, real solutions. If b squared minus 4ac, if the discriminant is positive, then there are two. So plus or minus square roots. Okay, what if the discriminant is equal to 0? 0 means this part is 0, this part is 0. So plus square root of 0 means 0, right? 0. So plus 0 minus 0 means we have only one solution, one fraction. And this is a real number. So discriminant is 0. That means there is only one real solution. Okay, the last one is the discriminant is negative. If the discriminant is negative, so this part is square root of negative 2. Then negative 2, square root of negative 2 is no longer a real number. This is a complex number. So this will be square root of 2i, right? Complex number. So there are two distinct complex solutions. Can you see this one? So always we can find the type of the equations by looking at the discriminant. Okay, discriminant. Okay, for this example, let's determine the discriminant and the number of real solutions. Okay, the discriminant equals b squared minus 4ac. So let's plug in all these values. That equals b squared, so negative 5 squared minus 4, a equals 2, and c equals 1. Then 25 minus 8, which is 17. All right, so 17 is a positive number, right? So since it's a positive number, there are two real solutions. Because in the square root, so because look at this, negative b plus or minus square root of 17, right, over 2a. So we have plus or minus square root of 17. This is real numbers. So there are two real solutions. Okay, let's try the next example. Okay, 3x squared plus 6x plus 7 equals 0. Then this part is a, this part is b, and 7 is c, right? So the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So b squared, so 6 squared minus 4ac. Then 36 minus 12 times 7, 84. And this is negative number, right? Negative. Okay, 48. Negative 48. So negative is, since negative 48 is in the radicand, this is no longer a real number, right? This is no longer a real number. So this is a complex number. So there's no real solution, right? So therefore, there is no real solutions. No real solutions. Because negative means, so look at this, negative b plus or minus square root of negative 48. So this is a complex number, right? Complex number. So no real solution. Let's try another one. X squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 0. All right, a equals 1. So 1, right? 1. This is a, b 6, and c equals 9. So the discriminant b squared minus 4ac equals 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 9. 36 minus 36. Aha, look at this. 0. The discriminant is 0. That means negative b plus or minus square root of 0 over 2a, right? So this part is 0. That means we have only one real solution. So therefore, there is one real solution. Okay. Okay, next definition is Pythagorean theorem. Okay, this means the sum of two legs a squared plus b squared should be equal to the square of the hypotenuse. Okay, so in this right triangle, this should be a right triangle. Then A and B are the sides in this 90 degrees, and C is called hypotenuse, right? So the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of squares of each leg. Okay, we call this legs. We call this what? Legs. Right? And this is called hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. All right. So using this formula, we can find side lengths of one of these three sides. Okay, here's an example using the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, here's a television set, and the screen of television, the diagonal is 60 inches. So diagonal is from one corner to the other corner. So this is 60 inches. And then the length. The aspect ratio is 16 to 9. So the length is 16. So 16 times of some number, let's say 16x. Then since this is a ratio, the width will be 9x. I don't know what the value of x is, but the ratio is 16 to 9, right? 16 to 9. So there is 16 times of a number, and then 9 times of the number. And diagonal has to be 60 inches. So based on this one, since this is a rectangle, this is 90 degrees, and there are two legs, 9x and 16x. Then the hypotenuse is 60. So using the Pythagorean theorem, we can write it something like this: 9x squared plus 16x squared. Sum of the squares of two legs is equal to the square of diagonal hypotenuse. So let's solve this equation. Then 9 squared is 81, x squared plus 16 squared is 256, x squared, and 36,000. And combine these two, so 337, x squared is equal to 3,600. Divide each side by 337. All right, then x equals, get rid of the power 2, then the right side becomes square root of plus or minus square root of 306,000, right? Divided by 337. And use a calculator. So in that case, we don't need a negative sign, right? We don't need negative sign because length is always positive. So we can remove the negative sign and then use the calculator. That will give you approximately equal to 3.268 inches. So the length. So therefore the length is 16x, right? So 16 times 3.268 is approximately 52.3 inches. And the width is 9x. So 9 times 3.268 is 29.4 inches. Okay, so 16. The aspect ratio is 16 to 9, means 16 is the length part, right? Length. And then 9 is the height of the that's the width of the television set. All right, so whenever you have a right triangle, we can use Pythagorean theorem, so that the hypotenuse squared equals sum of the squares of two legs. Okay, next example is there's a chocolate bar, and the original volume is 5 inches times 0.5 inches and 2 inches. So it will be 5 cubic inches. And the manufacturer decided to reduce the volume by 20% of the original volume. So the new volume, it will be 80% of the original volume. So 80%, so 0.8 times the original value 5 is 4 cubic inches. So they want to make a 4 cubic inches of rectangular solid candy bars. Then the volume formula, what's the volume of a rectangular prism, a box? That is length times, the volume is length times the width times the height. That is the volume, right? Volume. So the length of the new volume is W plus 3, and the width is W, and the height is 0.5. So this product should be 4 cubic inches. Can you see it? So we want to find the width and the length so that the new volume will be 4 cubic inches. So from this one, let's find W. So this is equal to, if you rewrite it, that is W plus 3 times 0.5 W, right, equals 4. Then distribute, so 0.5 W squared plus 1.5 W equals 4. And then we don't like decimals. So anyway, let's divide it, let's multiply by 2 to make W squared equals 1. Multiply by 2, multiply the equation by 2. So that is W squared plus 3W equals 8. And then we can move 8 to the left. So this is an equation, new equation. And from this equation, you can use factoring, but factoring is not working. Or you can use quadratic formula if you want, or you can use completed square method. So in that case, why don't we just use a quadratic formula? So the quadratic formula is x equals, okay, so A, what is A? In this case, A equals 1, B equals 3, C equals negative 8. So using this, the quadratic formula, x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So let's plug in a, b, c values. So 3 squared, negative 3 plus or minus square root of b squared. 3 squared minus 4 times a equals 1, c equals negative 8 over 2 times a. Then x equals negative 3 plus or minus square root of, okay, 9. This part is 9 plus 32, which is 41, right? So that's square root of 41 over 2a. In the user calculator, then we have 1.7 or negative 4.7. And negative is not a solution because length cannot be a negative number, right? Okay, actually this is not x, this should be w. This should be w, right? So we found w. W is 1.7. Then what's the length? Then the length. Therefore, the length therefore the length is w plus 3 inches. So 1 plus 7 plus 3 inches, 4.7 inches. That is the length, and the width is 1.7 inches. Okay, next example is this. When you drop an object from a certain height, then the height formula is this. The height formula is equal to negative 16t squared plus v0t plus h0. In this case, v0 is the initial speed. So if you throw a ball or if you just release the ball, then there is the initial speed. So the initial speed is given, which is 5 feet per second. And the height, h0 is the initial height. The initial height is where the object is thrown or released. So that is the height, initial height. And the initial height is given, which is 220 feet. So when you throw an object, then once the object, touches the ground or, the bottom, the surface area of the water, then the height will be 0, right? So this is the height. This is h of t. So once the object touches the ground or the water, then the height will be 0. Always. Then negative 16 t squared. T stands for the time in seconds. And the V0 is given. It's 5 feet per second is the initial velocity. You are throwing downward. So it is the sign is negative. If you're throwing an object upward in the air, then the speed is positive. But if you're throwing it towards the bottom, then the sign is negative. And the height is 220 feet. So we have an equation, and then solve for t. Then this t is the second when the second after the ball is released or thrown. All right, then how do we find this t? Well, use the quadratic formula. So quadratic formula, t equals negative b. Okay, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So that equals negative b. So negative times negative 5 plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4, a is negative 16, c equals 220 over 2a, 2 times negative 16. Okay, then I use a calculator, then t equals, then t equals 5 plus or minus square root of 14.105, 14,105 divided by negative 32. Okay, so plus or minus, then this will give you two values, negative 3.38 or t equals 3.56 seconds, right? And for the time, negative does not mean anything. So select the positive value, which is it takes 3.56 seconds once you throw an object, then the object will touch the ground. Okay, that's it for this section.